NFL draft is coming up on Thursday, and we have some shocking, bold predictions from Dave Richard here on Fantasy Football Today in 5. I'm Jamie Eisenberg. That's Dave Richard. Upcoming NFL draft, and time for Dave to give us some bold predictions. So, Dave, you got 3 of them. What's bold prediction number 1?
Number 1, the New England Patriots trade out of number 3 and then trade up to number 5, and they're the team that ends the draft with J.J. McCarthy as their quarterback.
So they trade out of 3
to Minnesota.
Who goes to 3? Minnesota?
Minnesota goes and gets Drake May. I don't think that's bold enough, though.
And then they
so
trade back
I
to
want
number
the
5.
second step, the trading back. And I think it's been worked out that the Chargers want to move back. They don't want to pick at 5. They want to accumulate picks. And the Patriots get so much in trade from Minnesota that they use most of that, not all of that, obviously, but most of it to move back up to 5 and get JJ.
So still get their quarterback. Vikings get their quarterback. Chargers still get a draft haul. That works out well for probably all 3 teams. And maybe the Patriots have J.J. McCarthy as the quarterback they've been looking at all along. So we'll see if that unfolds. That's very bold that the Patriots making a lot of moves in the first 5 picks of the NFL draft. Bold prediction number 2.
Brandon Ayuk heads to the AFC. And he's not the only wide receiver to get traded on draft day. Now, you're going to try and tell me, all right, name the other receiver. I know that A.J. Brown's name has been floated around. That would surprise me. T. Higgins is out there. What about one of these other receivers that's in a contract year? You know, Chris Godwin's in a contract year, and Dave Canales is now in Carolina. Is there a correlation there? Could there be another trade involving a wide receiver? I think there will be. It might be something that we just haven't necessarily thought about yet, and we'll actually see it happen during the draft. But I think Ayuk is going to be one of those guys who's moved. The 49ers are going to be smart about it. They're not going to keep him in the NFC. They're going to let him hang in the AFC. Buffalo makes a ton of sense. And I think it'll take the same type of compensation that the Titans got for A.J. Brown a couple of years back.
So we talked about this on our wish list show on on Wednesday. And you said, Ayuk to the Bills. We kind of talked more about the Josh Allen part of this. If Ayuk does go to Buffalo, he is wide receiver what in fantasy for 2020?
Jamie, if he goes to Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville, or even Kansas City, and obviously Kansas City, he's a top 10 fantasy receiver. He might work his way to like 8 or 9 in my rankings. I feel like right now, don't quote me on, I think Chris Olave is at 9 in my rankings. I don't feel great about that, but I don't know who to put there that's ranked behind him. Ayuk would be a slam dunk because he's a bona fide number 1 wide receiver on a new team where he's not. This wouldn't be the case in Kansas City. He wouldn't necessarily share to the same level that he shared in San Francisco. He'd see more targets per game.
He goes to Buffalo. He is probably wide receiver 7 for me. Right now, he's like wide receiver 14. So I would love that situation for him.
Yeah.
Josh Allen,
top 15-ish type of pick, right?
He'd be right now. Wide receiver 7 for me, I believe, is Puka. So he's a borderline first round pick.
Right.
So,
sure.
It would be hard to keep Brandon Ayuk in Buffalo out of my first round. And then what does that mean for Deebo Samuel quickly? Just if Ayuk does leave, just period. Where does Samuel now move up, and George Kittle as well?
I think San Francisco would draft a wide receiver, and there's a lot of wide receivers that can run slant routes and has speed in this draft. What if Xavier Worthy goes to San Francisco? They have the second to last pick in round 1. They would then have 2 late picks if they traded with Buffalo, for example. One of those picks could be spent on Worthy. It could be spent on Brian Thomas if he falls because of his shoulder situation. There's a lot of speed that's out there that can be replaced, and it's a contract headache. The 49ers have a lot of contract headaches coming up, but that would leave one of them, and a pretty big one, if they move on from Ayuk and replace him with one of the receivers in this draft that has a lot of speed.
If you do have the ability to make moves in your dynasty league, pick up Jawan Jennings just to stash him. You never know what can happen, but he would be the next man up in that 49ers passing attack right now if, in fact, they don't spend an early pick on a wide receiver. All right, bold prediction number 3, Dave, is?
This kind of plays into something that we talked about on the Wish List podcast on Wednesday, Jamie. Blake Corum goes to Harbaugh. John Harbaugh.
Okay.
You don't think John Harbaugh isn't paying attention to what his brother Jim did at Michigan? You don't think he saw what Blake Corum can do? And they draft Corum to be the heir apparent to Derrick Henry in Baltimore. And Corum spends a year working as a part-time back. They've got Keaton Mitchell too. So in the future, it could be Keaton Mitchell and Blake Corum as a 1-2 punch. And they've always used multiple running backs in Baltimore. Maybe they don't do it as much moving forward with Derrick Henry. But once they're through with Derrick Henry, it's Blake Corum as the main plug in that offense. And then you've got Keaton Mitchell as the change of pace guy.
And Mitchell coming off of a torn ACL, we hope will be fully recovered for this year, but it could take some time for him to get back to the level he was at
Probably will.
before the
Hmm.
injury. So yes, that would be fun for 2025 and beyond. Could be a little bit of a headache for 2024 if they spend some high level pick on a running back, but I think we all know at this point there's not going to be a lot of first round picks going to the running back position, maybe not even a lot of second round picks going to the running back position. So if they get the right price on a running back like Corum, that would make some sense for the long term. Short term could be a little frustrating, but I do like all three of those bold predictions, especially if Ayuk does end up in Buffalo. So that's Dave Richard. I'm Jamie Eisenberg. This is Fantasy Football 10 5. We'll be back on Thursday covering the NFL draft. We'll have you covered with all of your NFL draft needs right here on FF5.